There comes a point in almost every person's life when they begin to notice a pattern, a quiet repetition of experiences that seem different on the surface, yet strangely familiar underneath. You try to move forward, to grow, to become someone better, someone stronger, someone more in control of their life. And yet, somehow, you find yourself returning to the same place. The same thoughts, the same habits, the same emotional reactions, the same outcomes. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, subtly, almost invisibly. You make progress, and then you stop. You feel motivated, and then you lose it. You promise yourself things, and then you break those promises. And after a while, a question begins to form in your mind. Why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep getting in my own way? Why is it so difficult to become the person I know I could be? And that is where this journey truly begins, because the answer to that question is not simple. It is not comfortable, and it is not something most people are willing to face. The answer is this: the mountain standing in your way is not the world. It is not your circumstances. It is not other people. It is not bad luck. The mountain is you. Self-sabotage is one of the most misunderstood human behaviors, because from the outside, it looks irrational. It looks like laziness, like lack of discipline, like inconsistency. It looks like someone who says they want something, but then does everything in their power to avoid achieving it. But if you look deeper, much deeper, you begin to realize something important. Self-sabotage is not random. It is not meaningless. And it is not a sign that something is wrong with you. In fact, self-sabotage is often a sign that something inside of you is trying to protect you. Your mind is designed, above all else, to keep you safe. Not happy, not fulfilled, not successful. Safe. And sometimes what your mind considers safe is simply what is familiar, even if that familiarity is painful, even if that familiarity is limiting, even if that familiarity is the very thing that is holding you back from becoming who you truly want to be. So when you try to change, when you try to step outside of your usual patterns, when you begin to move towards something new and unknown, your mind reacts. It creates resistance. It creates doubt. It creates fear. Not because you are incapable, but because you're stepping into territory that your mind does not yet recognize as safe. And this is where most people misunderstand themselves. They think that the resistance they feel means they are doing something wrong. They think that the discomfort is a sign to stop. They think that the fear is a warning. But in reality, that resistance is often a sign that you are doing something right. Because growth, by its very nature, is uncomfortable. Growth requires you to become unfamiliar with yourself before you become someone new. And that transition, that space between who you were and who you are becoming, is where self-sabotage lives. Every pattern you have today began as a solution. That is something most people never stop to consider. The way you think, the way you react, the way you cope with stress, the way you handle relationships, the way you respond to challenges, all of it was learned. At some point in your life, those patterns served a purpose. Maybe avoiding confrontation helped you stay out of trouble. Maybe overthinking helped you feel in control. Maybe holding back helped you avoid rejection. Maybe staying small helped you feel safe. And at the time, those strategies worked. They protected you. They helped you navigate your environment. They gave you a sense of stability. But the problem is, your life has changed, and your patterns have not. What once protected you is now restricting you. What once helped you survive is now preventing you from growing. And this creates a kind of internal conflict. Part of you wants to move forward. Part of you wants to stay where you are. Part of you is reaching for something bigger. Part of you is holding on to something familiar. And until you understand both sides of that conflict, you will continue to feel stuck. The idea of a comfort zone is often misunderstood, because people assume that comfort means ease, happiness, or satisfaction. But that is not always true. Your comfort zone is simply what you know. It is what your mind has experienced enough times to recognize as predictable. And predictability feels safe, even when it is not good for you. Even when it keeps you in situations that drain your energy, limit your potential, or prevent you from growing. This is why people stay in jobs they don't enjoy, why they remain in relationships that don't fulfill them, why they repeat the same mistakes over and over again, not because they want to suffer, but because they are more afraid of the unknown than they are tired of the familiar. When you think about changing your life, you probably focus on what you will gain. More freedom, more success, more confidence, more opportunities. But your mind focuses on something else entirely. What you might lose. You might lose your current identity. You might lose the version of yourself that you've spent years building. You might lose the habits, the routines, the beliefs that have defined you. And even if those things are limiting, they're still yours. Letting go of them feels like losing a part of yourself. And that is why change feels so difficult. Your emotions are not obstacles. They are information. They are signals pointing you towards something deeper. When you feel fear, it often means you are approaching something important. When you feel discomfort, it often means you are growing. When you feel resistance, it often means you are confronting something within yourself that you have not yet fully understood. But instead of listening to these signals, most people try to escape them. They distract themselves. They avoid. They suppress. And in doing so, they miss the message entirely. Imagine if instead of running away from your emotions, you became curious about them. Instead of asking, "How do I stop feeling this?" you asked, "What is this feeling trying to show me?" That shift alone can change everything. Transformation is not a single moment. It is not one decision, one realization, one breakthrough. It is a process. A slow, consistent, sometimes uncomfortable process of becoming aware of your patterns, questioning them, and choosing differently. Not once, but again and again. You don't become a new person overnight. You become a new person through repetition, through small choices, through daily actions, through the quiet moments where no one is watching. And you decide to show up differently anyway. Not once, not twice, but consistently. That is how change happens. That is how identity shifts. That is how the mountain begins to move. The obstacles in your life are not always external. Sometimes they are internal reflections of what you have not yet resolved. Your fears, your doubts, your beliefs about yourself, your expectations, your past experiences. All of these things come together to form the mountain you are trying to climb. And the more you avoid them, the steeper that mountain becomes. But when you begin to face them, when you begin to understand them, when you begin to work with them instead of against them, something changes. The mountain does not disappear, but it becomes climbable. So take a moment now, not to rush forward, not to look for the next answer, but simply to reflect. What patterns have you been repeating? What fears have been holding you back? What parts of yourself have you been avoiding? Because the moment you begin to see clearly is the moment everything begins to change. The mountain is not your enemy. It is your teacher. And once you learn from it, you realize something powerful. It was never there to stop you. It was there to shape you,